How's it, Jordan here, and in this video I'm going to be doing the first part of the inventory system. Here with me is my dad.
I'm back! You can't do without me, it seems. You're begging me to come talk rubbish and dumb myself down. Yeah? What do you think about that?
Very useful.
Okay, so what are we discussing today? The inventory system. Are you going to show us how it works? And what's also interesting about this inventory system, or this particular part, is that you could actually do some kind of little micro game in this actual inventory system. This particular part of the inventory system that you're showing is pretty cool. You could do some like almost face painting. Yeah? What do you think? For a young child.
Yeah, even though this is a very simple base project with Tilemap, inventory system is extremely powerful too because you can put it in literally any game.
Well, show us something. You can just imagine someone just drawing like a young child, just drawing something up. I can imagine where you have that tile right now. You click a tile there. Those are eyes. There's two eyes. And then there's some skin tone, and maybe there's a mouth, and things like that. It's such a quick and easy little game for someone who could spend ages playing around with.
I know, maybe some sort of puzzle game.
Yeah, or a puzzle. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. No, just a simple puzzle.
Yeah. For demonstration purposes, I'm just doing a very basic Tilemap project I did in my last episode, so if you want to check that out, then you can have a link in the description. However, there's just a very basic little thing where you can just draw tiles for visual purposes, but this can be in pretty much any game.
And how does that tie into the inventory system?
So I'm just doing tiles because it's visual, so you can actually place and see it's actually working. But if you're doing like you need to hold items, let's say like Minecraft sword or an axe or something, then you'd put that axe item in here. And this is quite dynamic, so you can make it in literally any game you want with very little changing of the code.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that you want to demonstrate?
Yeah, first of all, in the next section where we're going to do part 2 of the inventory, there's part 1, we are going to have these items so we don't get unlimited items, so you have to collect the items. So
it'll be accounts.
Yes, it will have accounts, and then if you do have 0, then we'll just hide it.
Okay, and you said that usually you have unlimited, or do you not have unlimited?
Yes, this kind of there's an inventory system just like my latest game ZDAX, where we have unlimited items, so it's kind of like a creative mode. However, if you're planning on doing something, with we need to collect items like the Minecraft 2D demo I made, then you want to count.
Okay, but before we go into the code section, what else are you working on? I noticed that you were talking about ZX and that you were talking about mods and all these new cool things. You were so excited and you spent like the whole day yesterday working on it. And then, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm trying to, hopefully I'll be able to let you mod ZX. And of course it's
possible. What does that mean?
So essentially you can mod stands for modification, so you can essentially add things that ZX doesn't start with. So you can add new blocks, new items eventually.
Okay, dynamically or in code, or do they code, or how?
The first part I'll be doing code. I'm not sure whether to do visual scripting or something like that, but I'll start with code.
Okay, so when you say start with code, someone will actually be able to edit and code in existing.
Yes, using C#, they'll be and a bit of Visual Studio. They'll be able to make their own types of blocks and their own models for the blocks, stuff like that.
And does it have to conform to the exact cube size, or can you actually do something crazy?
No, that's a great thing about ZX, because first of all, it's very easy to replace the meshes and stuff like that, so I should be able to do a nice modding system.
Okay, and when you say modding system, will that also allow you to create creatures?
Eventually, currently ZX is very basic, so it doesn't have any support for that, but maybe in future I'll add some sort of modding system for that.
So you've got some interesting stuff in the future coming up. You're excited about it.
Yeah.
And let's then get started with the coding.
Yeah, let's get started. Okay, we're in Unity now. So as you see, I have just loaded up my Tilemap project. This is the last video I made. I made a video on how to make a tile map system, placing system. So as you see, we can place tiles and delete them. Now I'm going to add a little inventory system for this. Now you don't have to use this exact project, but it is recommended to start with this just before you start doing your own, putting it in your own project. So first thing I'm going to do is select my camera and just make the size 3 instead of 5, just so it's zoomed in a bit more. It was quite small before. There we go. That's better. Right. Next thing I'm going to do is go create, right click in the hierarchy, and I'm going to make a UI, and I'm just going to choose a canvas. Okay. Inside that canvas, I'm going to add a create empty, which is just a normal object but with no components really on it, and I'm going to name it inventory. Okay, I'm going to make the width 0. Okay, and that will help with another component later on. The next thing I'm going to add is another empty UI. Actually, just create empty. And it's a child for inside the inventory, and I'm going to name it inventory slots. Okay, there we go. On here, I'm going to change the position. So I found best values for this is negative 385 on the X, and on Y, a positive position Y is negative 140. There we go, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a bit. I'm going to also change the width to 0, and this will affect the component I'm going to add now. I'm going to just quickly make another empty, and it is called inventory slot instead of inventory slots. Okay, and inside inventory slots, I'm just going to add a couple of things. First, I'm going to add an image. I'm going to call it background. I'm going to change the width to 70 by 70. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure there's no sprite. You can add a sprite, but I just wanted a white box just as a placeholder. Like, you can change it, but I'm just going to keep it for this in this video. Now I'm going to add another image. This is actually just a copy background. And I'm going to just duplicate it. And I'm going to name it preview. There we go. And I'm going to make the width 60. And I'm going to make the color black. The reason why, by the way, you could also make it practically any other color, by the way, not just black. I just chose that because it stands out very bright. Okay, so you don't actually have to do this, but the reason why I'm doing this, let's just make that 0. The reason why I'm doing this is just so that there's just a placeholder color, just so I can see the difference between my preview and my background. If both the same color for now, I won't see the difference. Okay, and a thing you might be wondering, by the way, is why the inventory slot is so tiny. I went on what I do is I go on my canvas and replace the UI scale mode constant pixel size to scale with screen size. There we go. Okay. Good. Now, okay. So you may also be wondering why my inventory slot is a bit out of place. The reason why is if we go inventory slot, first thing I want to change the width. Now my good scale is a width and height of 70. So if we go to scene, nothing has changed, but if you do change the width, you'll see a little box outline, so we won't make it fit that. And if we go now to inventory slots, I'm going to add a thing called a horizontal layout group. So add components and search horizontal layout group. Good. Now I'm going to make spacing of 8, and as you see, it made it in a good area. And also, normally if we disable this and duplicate this, it will be underneath it. But if we enable it again, as you see, it kind of stacks, and you don't have to set the position and copy and paste it all. So you can just duplicate it a bit. Let's just undo this quick. Now I don't want to do that quite yet. And by the way, the last thing I want to change with the inventory slot is I want to duplicate my background, and I want to make the width 80 now. And let's just make this any color. Let's say a green or a red or something. Let's just choose green. You can make this pretty much any color as long as it stands out. And you can change it with the proper image later. There we go, select. Okay, if we just zoom out, as you see, we just stack this. Let's just make sure everything's on, good. So let's just make sure it still works, good. And I'm going to change the width to 80, I believe. Okay, now if we duplicate it, there we go. Actually, let's just make this 70 again, there we go. And let's make a new folder and name it prefabs. Okay, there we go. Now if we drag our inventory slot and drag it into the prefabs folder or in your assets folder, but I want to keep things organized for this project, I'm just going to select our inventory slot. It's now prefab, so you have a prefab, you could just drag it in and kind of duplicate the object. Now I'm going to rename the inventory slot to _1. And if we just duplicate it, let's just duplicate it 10 times. There we go. And the little green outline is the select outline. So essentially, when you scroll, it will change. It will show you what you're selecting. And I'm using a very nice pack. It's designed for Minecraft, so quite a lot of files in there will be useless for Unity. However, it is a very nice pack, and it has some very nice textures I'm using. So it was created by a guy called Ignaf, and the link to download it is in the description. But if we go to textures, you'll have a block, and I have tons and tons of nice textures I can use. Along with that, I have some GUI, but then I have to cut it up, and it's a bit of a mission, so I won't do this for this video. Okay, so if we, so by the way, also when we press play, all the green parts will be hidden, and it will only be shown when we start scrolling. Okay, so I'm going to select my grid, and I'm just going to, let's go window, and I need to create a new window. So I'm going to choose 2D and choose tile palette. Okay, and this will become a free window for now, so you could just move it around, but I'm just going to drag it into here and make it part of my project console tile palette. So in the last episode, I made it so we could, if we just zoom in, let's say we select our highlights, let's say zoom in. As you see, you can draw in editor with Tilemaps, but you can't usually draw in the actual play mode. So I wrote a small script just a build system script for it. So the reason why I want to do this is if we just cut the window in half, I just want to make a couple more blocks quick. So all you do to make a new block is you just go to our textures block, whatever textures you use, and let's say you find a nice texture, and you just select it and drag and drop it inside our window. And then if we just, let's go to, I already have a folder for this, and this would be my Tilemap folder. There we go. And if we just put it in tiles, there we go, which leaves assets. So let's go save. There we go. And now we can draw with this. However, currently we can't draw it with code. So this is what the inventory system is for. So I'm just going to add a couple more blocks. And for now, I'm just going to choose one block for every inventory slot. So I'll do a fast forward with this. Okay, so now we have 10 blocks in total. Right, let's just merge the tile palette again. There we go. And as you see, we have like diamond blocks, and you could just draw it with it normally. But let's add the inventory system now. So the first thing I want to do is on our inventory, let's just make a couple scripts. I'm going to add the inventory on our inventory game object. On our inventory, let's just wait for it to load. Okay, good. By the way, if you're having trouble searching for your blocks, instead of just scrolling down, there's a little search bar here. So just say no. Okay, I already have a script, so let's just drag my inventory in here. And as you see, now we have two scripts. We have our build system and our inventory script. Now I'm going to add a game manager. Okay. And also, the cool thing about having game manager, I would recommend having it in most your games, is also because you can. It's such a used script now that Unity actually decided to add its own little symbol icon for it every time you make it. Right? I'm going to add an inventory. Okay, inventory slot. Okay. And a item manager. And there we go. Okay. Now let's just open up one of these scripts in Visual Studio. Right. The first script I want to make is a little method in your game manager. So I'm making this method, right? And it's called getChild. Now Unity already has a built-in method called getChild. However, I really dislike using that method. The reason why is because getChild requires you to put in an integer of what index it is in the hierarchy. And that's why I like making my own system where you must put in name instead of the index of hierarchy, because you can put in index in hierarchy just for cleanness, and also in UI's case to make sure it overlaps and stuff like that. So I really dislike using this. So instead, I'm going to have my own little method. It's going to be static, so I don't have to reference this in a variable. And I'm going to return a transform. I'm going to call this getChild. Okay. And it's going to input a transform underscore transform, let's say. And I'm going to put in a string underscore name. Okay. I'm going to put in a variable here, which is an integer, child count, which is equal to our underscore transform dot child count. Okay, there's a built-in Unity variable, it's a very useful one. Okay, next I'm going to have a transform, which is current transform child. There we go. And I'm going to equal that to null. One thing to note, by the way, is if your name you put in doesn't exist as a child in that object, then it will just return null. So, yeah, be wary. Okay, good. It's given me an error, so you don't need to worry about that just yet, but I will just go return, and let's go return current transform child. Okay. Inside here, I'm going to have a for loop. Okay, and the max value is the child counts. There we go. Now current transform child is going to be equal to underscore transform dot get child and put in I. Now I'm actually using the getChild function in my getChild. It's quite funny, but I need to get the child in the index. So essentially how this function works, it isn't the most efficient it's perfect if you only have like 3 or 4 children in your object. But if you have like 100 or 200 or something, then it might be not the best solution for you. So I'm getting getChild, so I'm looping through all our children and checking their names. And if the name is the same as we inputted, then then we just break and that's good. Now I'm going to put in the current transform child dot name, we're getting the name now, and check if it's equal to the name we put in, underscore name. Okay, and if it is, then just break. And then at the end, we'll just return current transform child. But if it never ended up being the same, then it will just return null. So yeah. Right, if we went to Unity now, it would just do nothing. So let's not do that yet. The next script I'm going to edit is our item manager, and then we can test in Unity. So this is probably the most important class for our inventory system. And even if you don't really have a proper inventory system, or you're not planning on having an inventory system, it's still quite important because this just will be a big class array of all our different items you have in the game. So I'm going to put in public and item array. So this won't exist, so don't worry if your IDE tries to autocorrect you or says it's an error. Okay, let's say items. I'm going to have a class, and it's going to be a public class, and I'm going to name it item. And this is what we're making an array of. Now I'm going to make a public string. Now you don't need to do this, but it's a very nice thing. Even if you're not having so essentially, if you have a name for each item, then eventually, if you have tons of items, you could even search for the item using its name, which is quite useful. And just for visual purposes, just to figure out which item you're selecting. Let's have a public tile now. Okay, let's name it tile. And a public sprite. Okay, and I'm going to just name it sprite. You can name these pretty much anything you want, but I'm just going to name them that. And also I'm going to go using Unity engine.tilemaps since tile is part of the tilemaps class. Okay, the tilemap namespace, sorry. And also, if we just did this now, it would show, you'd think it would just show it as, so you could put in your name and tile and sprite as an array. It's great and it works perfectly. However, you can't see it in the inspector yet. So we need, above it, we need to go in square brackets system.serializable. There we go. Now let's go back to Unity. Now I'm going to make a create empty, and I'm going to name this item manager. And there we go. Let's reset its position and add the class item manager. There we go. And as you see, we have an array of items, and if we go plus, then we can put in a name, a tile, and a sprite. So if we just go to our tile map, and in tiles, we have all our different sprites. So I have my emerald block, my stone bricks. And if we go in item manager, let's say I add a acacia log. There we go. By the way, you can have spaces in this. That is perfectly fine. And if we just drag in the tile and insert underscore log, now you want the actual sprite, which is our little preview, where we're going to put in our preview. There we go. Now I'm just going to do this for all our different tiles, and I'll be back when I've done. Okay, I've completed it, and I have 10 items now of all my items. So now we can just close all this, and I've just put in my tile and my sprites. There we go. And now we have our items. This will be referenced all over your game. For, let's say you want to place or get an acacia log, then you'd reference index 0 or index 1 or something like that, whatever index you have. Right, let's open the Visual Studio quick. I want to choose my inventories. Let's make an inventory slot class. So I'm in my class, so I'm going to have a few things. First one is it has a public integer ID, and let's make that equal to -1. The reason why an ID is -1 is because it's totally impossible for an ID to ever become a -1. And that's just kind of like a null value for my integers. Since integers, they can't be null. So that's just my kind of null value for the ID. And you'll see that throughout the other scripts. Next, I'm going to have a few references. I'm going to reference my inventory. Okay. Now we won't need these references for a bit, but I'll just have them for later. And my item manager. There we go. I'll also have two private game objects. Okay, this will be select. There you go. And a private game object, preview. There we go. Now I'm going to have a, start. Okay, let's make a start method. And there we go, private void start. In here, I'm going to set these, like item manager, I'm going to set it to game object dot, and game object has a bunch of different things like create primitive and stuff like that. But I'm going to choose game object dot, find game object with tag. And make sure you do find game object instead of game object because they're very similar. So find game object with tag. Because we only want to find one game object, and this is going to be our item manager. And we'll make these tags in a minute when we get back to Unity. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to copy and paste this now, and this is going to be for my inventory. Alright, and we're just going to replace this with this. There we go. And I'm going to now go select, which is equal to, this is going to be a bit different, game manager now, and we're going to be accessing, if we go dot, we have a bunch of other things, but I'm going to choose get child. Okay, and remember we had to put in our transform, and we have to put in the name. And make sure there's the same as the name you have in your inspector, or hierarchy, sorry. Okay, select.gameObject could return to transform. And if we just copy select and replace this with the same values but for preview. There we go. Good. Now I'm going to add a couple more methods. So I'm going to have a public void, and it's going to be set slot ID. And you have this in int, and it's going to get an underscore ID. And this is going to be a block ID. So this ID is necessary not only for getting what block we're selecting, but also for getting what sprite we're going to show on the inventory, stuff like that. So ID is equal to underscore ID, so we're saying a new ID. And if you just want nothing, then you just have a, you just set ID to -1. Okay, so if ID is not equal to null, okay, in brackets, I'm going to put in preview dot get component, and I'm going to get an image. Now this won't exist, so let's go using Unity engine dot UI. There we go. And now dot image, okay, dot sprite, and we're saying the sprite here is equal to item manager dot items, okay, in the index of our ID dot sprite. There we go. And I'm just going to copy all this and replace the whole if with else. And replace this with null. There we go. Now if we just go here, let's just on start. Now this will be replaced later, but set slot ID, if we make this, let's say 3, and let's just go to Unity quick, and let's go tag. You can add tag on anything. I need to add a few things like a item manager. Okay, I want to add an inventory, and that's it. In our inventory now, let's actually just add our item manager, and then in our inventory, let's set that tag. And now in our prefab, the last thing we need to do is just add a component, and let's call that inventory slot. There we go. Okay, if we just press play. Okay, I just forgot what I need to set. I need to replace the previous black with white. And that's just so we can see the image. And there we go, it's all diamond. Because, item manager 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, which is diamond block. Great. Now let's go back to the code. Next, I want to add 2 more functions, very quick little functions, but very important functions. We're going to have a public void. Actually, before I do, let's just stop there. I totally forgot. I accidentally made my item manager public. Let's make that private. Good. Okay, now we can set this. So public void select. There we go. And select is going to have our select dot game object dot set active. Okay, and we're going to make it, because selecting it, we want that true. And I'm going to copy select and replace that with false and name it deselect. Okay, there we go. And if we just go to, let's start writing our inventory script quick. So let's delete everything. And I'm going to have a public list, and this is going to be a list of transform. Transform list. And I'm going to name this inventory slot. There we go. Which is equal to new list transform. Now I'm just going to make a couple of variables. We aren't going to use this for a tiny bit, but just to add them, so I don't have to add them later. Now they're all going to be integers, and there's going to be a max select index, which is equal to 0. And let's just copy this. Next, we're going to have a select index and a previous select index. There we go, previous select index. And I'm going to make previous -1. That's just kind of our not been set yet value. Right, I'm going to make a public. Let's actually just add start quick. Let's add start again. For some reason it didn't add the private, just private. Okay, now we have start. I'm going to add a public int. Okay, this is going to be called get selected index. And this is going to be a very simple method. All it's going to do is just return a copy of selected index. There we go, and this is just for other classes which are going to use it. Now on start, we're going to set our max selected index to inventory slots, and this is this inventory slot dot a count. And the reason why I have count instead of length is because there's a list, not an array. The count minus by 1. Next, I'm going to go inventory slots in the index of 0. Okay, dot get component, and let's get inventory slots. Inventory slot, there we go. Okay, dot select, which is the new method we made. Okay, now I'm going to go, let's just do something like that. There we go. Next, I'm going to have a for loop. Okay, and just double click I if you're using Visual Studio, and go inventory slots dot count. Okay, and we're going to loop through all our inventory slots, and we go inventory slots in the index of I. Okay, dot get component inventory slots, and we're going to go set slot ID, and this is going to set the type of slots. So if we just go to Unity quick, okay, we just go to inventory, there we go, and we have this little lock icon. It's next to these 3 dots, and we just lock it. And this means if we click on other objects, it won't replace our inspector. So if we just select all our inventory slots and drag it into inventory slots, make sure it's in the right order, starting from 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, because that's very important. If it isn't in the correct order, then it can break. So if I just press play quick, I'll show you. As you see, it set it all. But if I, let's say, jumbled it all up in a big mess, something like that, yeah, it breaks and stuff like that. So let's just replace it. Yeah, let's close that. Let's just make sure it still works. Okay. And now I'm in Visual Studio. Quick, let's just go here. Okay, I'm just going to add let's just go enter. There we go. I'm going to make a update. Okay, so update, it runs after start, but unlike start, it repeats on and on and on. It never stops. So I'm pretty sure it's it updates. This runs 20 times every second, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's quite fast, and it's usually done for stuff like play and movement, things like that. In this case though, I'm going to have a if statement. So I'm going to have input, okay, and we're going to go input.getAccess, and this essentially is going to return an integer, positive or negative, integer or negative integer, on whether we're clicking a number or not. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to get access. So there we go, and I'm going to put in a mouse scroll wheel, and essentially mouse scroll wheel is a little string we must put in get access, and that detects when we're scrolling our mouse. So like Visual Studio probably has something like this just to detect our scrolling. In this case, it will be scrolling to change our, this will be to change what we're selecting, what block type we're selecting. But you could really do anything. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stuff like that. But essentially, if we make that greater, so if we are pressing it, so we're scrolling upwards, then it's greater than 0.01 f, and f is for float, just to detect, it's more than an integer, so we can have decimal values. And I'm going to have a method, and it's going to be a private set select index. There we go, and it's going to have an integer amount. Okay, and we want a private void. There we go. And void, by the way, means we don't have to return any value. And we're going to have select index plus equals by amount. So if it's negative, then we're going to be scrolling down. If it's positive, then we're going to be scrolling up. And go if select index is smaller than 0, and this is essentially to make sure we can't like scroll out of, like we can't scroll so much that it goes out of our block range. So we can't have -3 blocks. So we're going to have select index is equal to 0. And this is a check. If we're scrolling down too much, then it will just reset it to 0. Okay. So if selected is smaller than 0, then we make this is equal to selected index is equal to max select index. So if we scroll too far down, then it'll just loop us to the top. And if select index is greater than max select index, where we're scrolling too far outwards, then we're going to set it to 0. And then we're going to have a index. You don't need to worry about what it does right this second, but if it's greater than -1, then we need to go inventory. There's a bit of a long line. The inventory slots in the index of our previous select index dot get component. Okay, and this is going to be inventory slot. Okay, dot deselect. So essentially, the reason why I'm doing this, the previous index, is I found out that if you scroll, then you'll have to remove deselect. So if you scroll upwards by 1, then you'll have to deselect the previous one you're scrolling on, and this will do that exact thing. This will deselect the previous one. So we're going to go inventory slots in selected index of selected index dot get component inventory slot, okay, dot select. Okay, and this just selects the one we currently selecting. And in previous select index is equal to select index. Good. I forgot to do a couple things also. So if it's greater, then we can use our brand new method, set select index, and we're going to be adding it by 1. Okay, so we're going to increment every time we scroll by 1. Now you can make this pretty much any value, but I'm just doing 1 so we don't skip inventory slots. And then we go -1 if it's smaller, if we're scrolling down, which is smaller than -0.01f. Good, and there's going to be an else if. The reason why I'm doing an else if is because if this won't run, then we'll run this. But if this is if, then this will run, and then this will try and run. So this kind of, so we don't have to repeat things we know will be impossible and will never run, or never run. Yeah. So let's just go up here. Okay. And let's just go back to Unity quick. And if we press play, you may notice a bit of a problem where they're all selected. So you must scroll a bit, and now it works perfectly. But you have to scroll to remove all those other green selections. So let's fix that quick. Let's go to our inventory slot, and on start, I'm going to go deselect. Oh, and also I accidentally left that. Let's delete that. Okay, now let's go to Unity. And I found one tiny little problem. What you must do is on start, after you've set everything, set selected index 0. Okay, there we go. Now let's go to Unity. Okay, and if we just press play, okay, as you see, we can scroll perfectly. Scroll too far out or back, we'll just reset. There we go. Now you might have noticed one crucial problem where even if you do scroll and place it, will still be the same block. The reason why is because we haven't updated I haven't updated the block placing. So let's do that. Okay, so I'm in my last episode's building system. By the way, if you want to write the script for yourself, then just the link is also in the description. Right, let's have a private inventory slot, inventory, and let's name it inventory, and then a private item manager, and name it item manager. There you go. Okay, there. And now let's just make a start method. Let's just go to, let's say, my inventory slot script, and let's just steal this code from a different script. Okay, there we go. And that's it. Let's, of course, it's not it for the script, but that's all we need to do for now. So if we go to my place, it's very little code you need to replace. In fact, all we have to do is first just add an AND. So this will make sure that we can't place a null block. So remember when I said -1 value, if it was -1, then that's just default and it shouldn't show. Well, this to make sure we can't place a -1 block. Okay, our inventory slots, in the index of block ID. You don't have to have this, just so you know. It will still place the same block even if it's null. However, that isn't a good thing. Because this is a great method to use if you are having proper inventory where you can lose blocks and you can have empty slots and stuff like that. Okay, okay, components. Okay, let's put in inventory slot. Okay, and if we just give it an ID, let's get an ID, it's not equal to -1. So block ID doesn't exist. So in here, in our place, I will replace it so we don't need to input a tile because we don't need that now. We won't get the tile from drag and dropping the script. Let's just make, okay. Instead, we'll be inputting an int called surprise surprise block ID. There we go. And literally, we just replace underscore tile and we just get it from the item manager. Okay. We get items and put in block ID dot tile. Okay, and then just replace the place with inventory. So inventory dot get selected index, which is what we are actually selecting. Okay, there we go. Now let's go to Unity. And if we just press play, okay, now this is looking promising. There we go. Now we can place the block we're actually selecting. Okay, this is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!